So if you're listening to this and you're training in martial arts, lifting weights, carrying a firearm legally, learning self-defense, or simply trying to become a more capable human being in some way, I would encourage you to ask yourself a question. And the question is very simple. Why? Why do you want to become stronger? If the answer is to dominate others, you've missed the point completely. If the answer is to better protect, serve, and stand firm when life becomes difficult, then you're on the right path. Welcome back to Forged, a Rise 41 podcast channel dedicated to building stronger men, women in body, mind, and character. Okay? I'm your host, Gonzo Herrero. So before we get started, if you're enjoying the mission of this channel and believe in building stronger men and women in body, mind, and character, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future episodes of Forged. If this conversation resonates with you, please share with someone in your life who could benefit from it. So anyway, now let's get into today's topic. So today, on this show, we usually explore leadership, mental toughness, physical preparedness, history, philosophy, faith, combat sports, and human performance. Not so that we can pretend to be heroes, but so that we can become more capable human beings. Because strength isn't about intimidation, it's about responsibility. And today we're going to talk about something that many people are very uncomfortable discussing, and it is this: the responsibility of being capable of violence. Now, before anyone misunderstands what I mean, this episode isn't about glorifying violence. It's actually quite the opposite. It's about understanding that violence exists, whether we acknowledge it or not. History is filled with it. Our headlines are filled with it. And if we're honest, every single person listening to this has benefited at some point in their life from someone else's willingness to stand between innocent people and those who would do them harm. Police officers, soldiers, first responders, armed citizens, parents. The uncomfortable truth is this: civilization doesn't exist because violence disappeared. Civilization exists because good people are willing to confront it when necessary. So there's a quote, I think it's a Robert Heinlein quote, I think. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Robert Heinlein. It says something like this: violence, naked force, has settled more issues in history than has any other factor. Now, that doesn't mean that violence is good. It does mean that it's real. And maturity begins when we stop pretending otherwise. For most of my life, I've been fascinated by warriors throughout history. The Spartans, samurais, knights, modern special operations force, whatever. Everything a boy growing up likes, right? And if you study them long enough, you begin to notice something really interesting. And it's that the best warriors, the best ones, the truly elite ones, were not bloodthirsty. They were actually disciplined. They understood that possessing the capacity for violence and exercising violence are two very different things. Anyone can lose their temper. Anyone can scream. Anyone can become reckless. Very few people can remain calm while possessing the ability to do great harm. That is restraint, and that is character. And that is what we're really talking about today. There's an old saying: it's better to be a warrior in a garden, than a gardener in a war. I think there's truth in that, okay? Life is unpredictable. You don't get to schedule your emergencies. You don't get to decide when, evil decides to show up in some way, shape, or form. You don't get to tell danger, hey, come back next Tuesday when I'm ready, when I'm in the mood, okay? Being capable means understanding that your family, your friends, and sometimes complete strangers, actually, may one day depend on your ability to act decisively. But capability without judgment is dangerous. All right? So that's why the first responsibility of being capable of violence is restraint. The strongest person in the room should not be the most intimidating. They should be the calmest. If someone insults you online, you don't need to destroy them. If someone cuts you off in traffic, I'm guilty of this. You don't need to chase them. Well, not chasing them, but getting very upset about it. If someone is trying to provoke you in public, you don't need to accept that invitation. Weak people often mistake aggression for strength. Strong people understand that ego has started more fights than principles ever have. And a capable person asks, is this worth it? Can I walk away? Can I de-escalate this? Will my actions make this situation better or worse? Because every conflict carries consequences, be they physical, legal, emotional, spiritual. You may win the fight and lose everything else in certain instances if you're not careful. So the second responsibility is judgment. Violence should always be the last tool in the toolbox, not because it doesn't work, but because when it becomes necessary, something has already gone terribly wrong. Think about firefighters, for example. Their goal isn't to use the hose. Their goal is to prevent the fire. Likewise, your goal should never be to prove you're dangerous. Your goal should be to make violence unnecessary whenever possible. That means learning situational awareness, paying attention, avoiding bad places at bad times with bad people, maintaining your composure, listening more than speaking, developing emotional control. Ironically, many martial artists eventually discover that training makes them less interested in fighting, for example. The more they understand violence, the less they romanticize it. So because you know and they know what it costs. They've seen the injuries. They understand how quickly things can go wrong. And they recognize that every human being carries a story you'll never fully understand. The third responsibility, by the way, of being capable of violence is de-escalation, okay? I think we need more people teaching this or making others aware of this. Hollywood teaches us that every confrontation should end with a dramatic one-liner and an explosion, and you walk away because cool guys walk away from explosions, right? But real life isn't a movie, okay? Real strength often sounds like this. Hey, man, that's okay. My mistake. Let's just go our separate ways. It's not worth it. Imagine having all the capability in the world and choosing peace. Now that's power, because if your self-worth depends on winning every single argument, you become a slave to other people's opinions at that point. They can manipulate you. You're just going to do what they say. You're just going to be easily manipulated. A random stranger should not have remote control over your emotions, right? One of the greatest acts of strength is allowing your ego to lose so that everyone else can win. Finally, the fourth responsibility, protection. At the end of the day, capability exists to serve others. I talk a lot in this channel about being a person of service. This is part of this. At the end of the day, realize that your capability exists only to serve others. Your spouse, your children, your community, the elderly person being harassed in a parking lot, that coworker who's afraid to speak up, the friend who's going through a difficult time. Protection isn't just physical. Sometimes protecting people means listening. Sometimes it means mentoring. Sometimes it means standing beside somebody when everyone else has walked away and abandoned them, okay? And yes, occasionally, I guess, history reminds us that protecting innocent people requires physical courage. But if that day ever comes, your actions should come from duty, not from anger, from love and not hatred, from responsibility and not ego, because that's the difference between a protector and a predator. One takes because they can, the other serves because they can, and that's a distinction that's worth remembering. So if you're listening to this and you're training in martial arts, lifting weights, carrying a firearm legally, learning self-defense, or simply trying to become a more capable human being in some way, I would encourage you to ask yourself a question, and the question is very simple. Why? Why do you want to become stronger? If the answer is to dominate others, you've missed the point completely. If the answer is to better protect, serve, and stand firm when life becomes difficult, then you're on the right path. Capability is a gift, but it's also a burden. Because the stronger, wiser, and more capable you become, the more responsibility rests on your shoulders. And maybe that's what being forged is all about. Not becoming feared, but becoming dependable. The kind of person who can remain calm when others panic. The kind of person who chooses peace whenever possible. And the kind of person who's willing to stand between darkness and the people they love if the moment ever demands it. Because strong men and women aren't defined by their capacity for violence. They're defined by their ability to control it. And in a world that often rewards outrage and impulsiveness, in this world we live in on social media, etc., restraint may be one of the rarest forms of strength left. So give that a thought. Hope that's useful. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Forged. And if today's conversation meant something to you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Those simple actions help us reach more people and continue building a community focused on strength, discipline, responsibility, and character. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments, by the way. Have you ever had to exercise restraint in a difficult situation? What does being a protector mean to you? Share this episode with a friend, a training partner, a spouse, a family member who might need to hear it. And hey, until next time, stay strong in body, sharp in mind, and steadfast in character, because we are all shaped by pressure, refined through adversity, and strengthened through discipline. Remember, in the end, we're all forged. Thank you for your time and attention.